Hello everyone, my name is Jianliang Wu. Today I'm gonna present BlueShield, detecting spoofing attacks in Bluetooth Low Energy networks. This is a joint work with Yuhong, Virashva, Matthias, and Dongyan. BLE was released in 2011 with Bluetooth 4.0. It's mainly designed for power-constrained devices, such as smart home devices like smart lock, smart light, and smart building devices, such as temperature sensors. According to Bluetooth Special Interest Group market update, there will be nearly 5 billion BLE devices in 2022. To communicate with each other, BLE devices need to first discover each other. BLE uses an advertising and scanning mechanism to discover each other. Specifically, the slave BLE devices keep broadcasting advertising messages, and the master BLE devices, such as a smartphone, scans for the advertising message, sends connect request to the slave to set up a connection. Those advertising message is important for the device discovery in BLE communication. There is no authentication in the advertising messages, which makes BLE suffer from spoofing attacks. So in BLE's context, what is spoofing attack? When the master BLE device intends to connect to a slave device, it first scans for the advertising message. In this case, it may receive the spoofed advertising message from a malicious device. In this case, the master device establishes a connection with the malicious BLE device, and therefore, the attacker is able to feed malicious data to the user. Assume we have a smart glucose monitor. With spoofing attack, we may receive wrong blood sugar level and take the wrong medicine, which can lead to severe consequences. BLE has security mechanisms such as pairing, after which encryption and authentication could be enabled to prevent such attacks. However, in BLE, pairing is not mandatory, and actually most of the BLE devices do not even support or enable pairing. Besides, there are different spoofing enabling vulnerabilities in different layers. For example, the encryption at application layer might be vulnerable, which can enable spoofing attacks. The design and implementation of the Bluetooth stack may have vulnerabilities. And the other parts of the device may also have the zero-day vulnerabilities to enable spoofing attacks. Therefore, there is a need for a general approach to detect spoofing attacks in BLE. To meet this need, we propose BlueShield. In order to be general, BlueShield needs to meet the following requirements. The first is BlueShield needs to be vulnerability and device agnostic. That means BlueShield should provide a general protection instead of a case-by-case, device-by-device protection. Besides, BlueShield should support the legacy device that do not support firmware update or firmware modification. The second requirement is that BlueShield should be practical and effective. It should be transparent to the deployment environment, which means it should not introduce intervention to the user and the device. It should be easy to implement with low-cost commodity hardware and easy to deploy. At last, it should achieve high accuracy and low latency. To achieve these goals, there are several challenges. As I mentioned earlier, there might be vulnerabilities at different layers. Then the first challenge is how to protect all these different layers. Remember that the attacker needs to first send out spoofing advertising messages so that the master device can connect to it to launch the spoofing attack. Therefore, we focus on protecting the discovery step by protecting the advertising messages. So one easy fix is that how about we sign the advertising messages so that the attacker cannot spoof them. However, this approach needs firmware and protocol modification, which is not possible for most of the legacy devices, because most of the legacy devices do not support firmware update or firmware modification. This also leads to the second challenge, how to protect the devices that do not support firmware modification. To address this problem, we monitor the advertising message externally. The intuition behind this is that if we can identify malicious advertising messages, we can detect spoofing attack. BLE uses 3 channels for advertising. Therefore, we use 3 collectors to cover all the advertising channels, since one collector can only monitor 1 channel at a time. As I mentioned earlier, since there's no authentication information in the advertising message, the attacker can fault the advertising content. So we cannot rely on the advertising content to detect the malicious advertising message. So this leads to the third challenge, how to distinguish the malicious advertising from the benign ones. To address this challenge, we use physical features to differentiate different advertising messages. Specifically, we use the following 2 physical features: received signal strength indicator and carrier frequency offset. The RSSI could roughly reflect the location of a BLE device, while the CFO is Bluetooth radio specific. Therefore, if an advertising message is sent from a different place or a different device, there would be abnormal changes in these 2 features, as shown in the figure. So we can detect spoofing attack by detecting the abnormal changes of these features. However, if we keep monitoring these features continuously, there will be a lot of false positives due to their fluctuation. To solve this problem, we introduce protocol features, such as advertising interval. It's quite straightforward to understand that if both the malicious and benign devices are advertising at the same time, the observed advertising interval will be much smaller than the original one. We also leverage the state transition of the BLE device. We use different detection mechanisms when the device is in different state. BlueShield can also defend against strong adversaries, such as the attacker with software-defined radio capabilities, which can mimic some physical features. We leverage the moving target defense approach to defend such attackers. This mechanism is based on the fact that the physical feature, that is the CFO and RSSI values, are different in different channels, even though they are received on the same collector. Therefore, we reassign the channels for each collector to monitor after a random period of time. This randomness could prevent the attacker from mimicking all these features and therefore BlueShield can detect them. Here is the overall design of BlueShield. It has two phases, the profiling phase and monitoring phase. During the profiling phase, the profiler creates a profile for each device, and during the monitoring phase, it checks the physical features to detect whether there is a spoofing message. Once the spoofing message is detected, it raises alarm to the administrator and the user. During the profiling phase, the profiler receives advertising messages from the device to extract the device information and the protocol features of the device to create the profile. Here is an example of the profile. The advertising pattern indicates whether this device advertises in connection state. We also calculate the advertising interval during profiling phase. Here is the overview of the monitoring phase. Once the profile is created, BlueShield can monitor this device. During monitoring, it keeps receiving advertising messages. When it receives advertising packets, it first identifies where is this advertising packet from based on the device's profile. And then it detects whether this device utilizes a persistent advertising pattern or intermittent advertising pattern. If it's a persistent pattern, which means the device keeps advertising when it's in connection state, then the interval inspection itself is enough to detect the spoofing attack. On the other hand, if the device uses the intermittent advertising pattern, which means the device does not advertise in connection state, then BlueShield infers the current state of the device, and based on the current state, it uses different inspection mechanism. When the device is in advertising state, the interval inspection is enough to detect the spoofing attack. If the device is in connection state, it inspects the physical feature to detect spoofing attack. I'll introduce the interval inspection and physical feature inspection one by one. The interval inspection is kind of straightforward. During monitoring, BlueShield gets the observed advertising interval and get the interval from the device's profile. Then it compares these two values to check whether the observed interval is smaller than the interval in the profile. If the observed interval is smaller, it means there is spoofing advertising messages. Because the interval in the profile is the lower bound of the device advertising interval. Please check our paper to find how we get this value during profiling. For the physical feature inspection, we assume they follow the Gaussian distribution model. We divided the advertising packets into two windows, the lookback window and observation window, by the connection state. And then we calculate the parameters of the Gaussian distribution model based on the lookback window. After we get these parameters, we then calculated the negative log likelihood value for the observation window with the parameters we calculated from last step. And then we compare this value with the threshold to check whether this value exceeds the threshold. If this value is bigger than the threshold, that means there are spoofed advertising messages. Detailed information can be found in our paper. We evaluate BlueShield with 9 real-world devices, as shown in the figure. As we can see from the table, BlueShield can achieve low false positive rate as low as 2.37%, which means there's only one false alarm in a week's heavy usage. BlueShield also has a low false negative rate as low as 0.72%. As we can see from the table, BlueShield is also responsive. It can detect a spoofing attack within 3 seconds on average. As I have mentioned earlier, if we keep monitoring the physical feature continuously, there would be lots of false positives, and we have introduced the protocol feature to reduce the false positive. Therefore, we have evaluated the effectiveness of the protocol feature in reducing the false positive. We assume the user uses a device 5 times per day, which is already a heavy usage scenario according to the IoT device usage report. As we can see from the figure, even though the false positive rate is as low as 1%, there would be thousands of false positives if we keep monitoring the physical feature continuously. Otherwise, with the help of the protocol feature, there is less than 1 false positive per day. Besides, we have also evaluated the physical feature inspection with different K parameters. We have evaluated the physical feature inspection with different thresholds. The threshold is a trade-off between false positive and false negative. As we can see from the ROC figure, if the true positive increases, which means the false negative decreases, the false positive increases. We have also evaluated the physical feature inspection with different observation window size. As we can see from the figure, different window size do not affect the performance significantly. Therefore, using a smaller window size would be more responsive. We have also evaluated the impact of distance for the RSSI inspection, since the distance could affect the RSSI value. As we can see from the figure, if the benign and malicious device is further than 0.5 meter, BlueShield could robustly detect the spoofing device. Once a spoofing attack is detected, BlueShield notifies the administrator. It can also notify the user if the user installs an app, as shown in the figure, to receive the notification. Here is a short demo for the detection. Here is a benign BLE device, which is a door sensor. This is the collector. We use Raspberry Pi and Ubuntu as the collector. The second collector, here is the third collector. We run the monitor on the desktop, and we use this laptop together with this BLE device to emulate the spoofing attack. First, we run the script on 3 collectors. Then we start the monitor. The monitor first loads profiles of the device and then connects to the 3 collectors. After that, we start to emulate the spoofing attack. Start to send spoofing messages. The monitor is collecting data and analyzing the advertising message. After a while, it detects the spoofing messages. To sum up, we propose BlueShield, a framework for detecting BLE spoofing attacks. It uses robust protocol and physical features. It is implemented with low-cost commodity hardware, and it is fully transparent to users. We evaluate BlueShield with 9 real-world devices, and our evaluation shows that BlueShield has a low false positive and a low false negative rate. We open source BlueShield on GitHub. That's all for my presentation. Thank you for your attention.